Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode that nobody ever watches on a show that we are just launching for the first time. It's a new show for a new year with two friends who are chatting every Monday morning, and we figured, heck, we're having so much fun. Why not?
Let's share it.
Why not share it? So, welcome to the Dom and Gabe show today. The three things that we want to talk about is one, New Year's resolutions and how everybody hates them, and what we're doing to actually try to do something different. With that, two, we're going to talk about the movies that we watched over the weekend, or movies, games, books, stuff like that. And then we want to think through what is a show or a movie we watched or a book or something this past year that really stood out. So,
Yeah, something that moved us, and not because we had to watch it or it's good for us. It's just good content that we enjoyed for whatever reason.
Yep, that was fun. So, welcome to the show. That is fun. Okay, so this show is a show. It's just a conversation. Hi, Gabe. We think out loud about everything. So,
Yeah.
we joked a little while ago trying to figure out a name for the show. What are we going to call it? And we thought Hunter Blatherers is a really fun idea, and I like that because we're young dads. We got young kids. We're still kind of on fire. Like, we haven't given up on life.
Yeah.
We still want to get something out of it, and man, it takes a lot of coffee and conversation to figure out why we're here. What are we supposed to do? What matters?
And that hunger for the age-old times of the hunter-gatherers, but we're trying to pull that out. Dom's got some great hair, repping the ancient medieval look. But yeah, like we just like to talk about stuff that resonated back then. How's it resonate with us now? We got a lot of opinions.
Yeah, that's always fun. Got a lot of opinions. It's kind of like Good Mythical Morning. Like, we've both enjoyed that and watched that. Their conversion journeys have been great. So
Yeah.
Again, we just punch in 9 a.m. usually and reconnect, most weeks. And I just figured, we're having fun. This is really fun. I like to say, or we've joked, we've got 100% success, survival rate getting to today. So that's got to mean for something. So maybe we'll fail this show spectacularly. Who knows? Maybe it'll end up being a ton of fun. But we are both in marketing. We're both into movie watching. Like I said, we're youngish dads with little kids, and we're hungry to figure out why we're here, what matters. That comes with a lot of coffee and conversation. So let's start by talking about New Year's resolutions. And what I thought we could do is not just talk about them, but let's have a plan to check back in 1 month and then 3 months and see what do we notice. So, what are you doing for the new year that you have perhaps already started and you're not, putting off?
Yeah, so finishing up this year, I had many years in the past done very tangible, work out more, read X amount of books, do, very like mile marker stuff. But this past year, I wanted to be a bit more in touch with my emotional side and really, talk to Gabe and who he is and what he needs. So this past year was a lot of give myself grace and kindness, trying to okay, don't beat yourself up so hard. Just you're doing okay. Just keep going. So this past year was putting down the weight of responsibility and just just be happy with where you're at. So that was this past year. Now this year going forward, I'm really into exploring interests. We've talked many times about our interests and not exploring interests without any shame, and I'll explain what I mean by that, or what I should be doing. So kick it off, like what should a guy be doing? You think of I should be doing these certain activities that make a man. I was like, well, yes, those are good and valuable, but what do I enjoy? If no one in the world even knew what I was doing, what would I enjoy doing? And obviously still in the moral scope. And one simple thing is cross stitching. Love it. It is so. It's
I would never have
soothing,
thought to pick that up. I mean, I used to do some stitching, hemming and stuff, but
it's that area that I think it still has this connotation, like, well, and not even like it's feminine, it's just not thought of. And so I was like, let me just explore, and I came across and loved it. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do?
It's like something's just detached from everything, and it's like it's almost meditative. You just sort of get into it, and you only have to focus on that.
That's it. It's just one and it's just you see progress.
Motion, yeah.
It's just and it's a nice scene, and it's beautiful. It's fun. It's relaxing. I had fire going, have some music playing, whatever.
That's cool.
So yeah, this year I want to explore. If no one was to know what I was doing, again within the moral scope, I'm not doing anything
between you, me, and the internet.
Exactly. what interests would I do? What books would I read? What music would I listen to? So yeah, that's kind of it's more of an exploratory resolution.
Nice. And with cross stitching, does it have like it sounds like it comes with like a picture and then you sort of
Yes.
color like stitch by numbers kind of
So
thing?
starting out like that,
Mhm.
yeah. So I got this,
Wow.
from Michael's craft store. It's a it's a kit. You
Mhm.
map out the numbers. It's basically paint by number with cross stitching.
Nice.
But I would love to move on to doing my own stuff,
Yeah.
But
Do you have
starting
family members who cross stitch?
no, not
No?
really. We had the only thing that came across was when we got married, a friend of mine from high school made
Mhm.
this beautiful, like, antique looking cross stitch. It just says, our initials, our the year we got married, and like a beautiful little thing. And ever since it's hung up in our kitchen,
Mm.
and always loved it. And I was like, that seems cool.
Yeah, yeah. What do the kids say when they see you doing that? They react at all? Are they just like,
No,
watch, yeah, there's dad.
they're like, oh, dad's cross stitching. Well, we did it in a
Yeah.
my wife started crocheting and I started cross stitching. So it's just like,
Okay.
but we've always done crafts, so it's not like foreign.
Mhm.
But we have the only thing now is we have a cat that we just have to put away so it doesn't mess up the stuff. But
Play with the yarn balls, right?
exactly.
Cool.
How about you?
Um,
What's your year looking like?
so I think I've bitten off more than I can chew, which is usual, but I'm trying to pace myself
Yeah.
through it because do want to accomplish all of it. So one, all of these things are things I've already started. I was inspired by a video by Alex Hormozy, which I don't know that I sent to you. Maybe I did. I don't remember.
No, I'm okay.
But it was great. It was like, how to set yourself up for the new year and how to really win and stuff like that. And I liked a lot of his advice. I think two of which I'd already implemented. So three things when it comes to like specifically like my phone.
Yeah.
I like and I need this idea of being unhackable. And part of that starts with like managing or controlling, feeling like I can control my environment.
Yeah.
So first thing was no notifications on my phone. So I nixed everything. I choose when I want to check in on my phone. I don't let anything hack my attention. So that was one. I'd already been doing that, just reaffirming, yeah, definitely going to be doing that. Two, I'm putting my phone on grayscale mode. I'm going to keep it that way for as long as possible, unless I'm watching a show or something or a
Yep.
movie. Then I'll switch it back on. But I don't even want to be hacked by the colors. And I'm in design and marketing. I love color and beautiful visuals, and my phone is like set up beautifully and stuff like that. But I will spend way too much time trying to find the perfect background image to inspire myself, I want to be delighted by my phone every time I turn it on. I've spent way too much time hunting for wallpaper apps so that every time I turn on my phone, I'm delighted by it and stuff. Okay, there's a good to that maybe, but I'm also realizing I'm being hacked by, and this is the intention of all of the apps out there, is to create addictive
A draw.
app use,
Yeah.
draw you in, and colors are part of how that happens. I want to open Instagram when I want to open it, when I'm ready for it, not because I saw
Yeah.
a flash of pink in the corner of my eye and something triggers and now I'm out of control again,
Yep.
So it's a little thing. It's like, And the other thing was I killed the background images on my phone, killed it on my desktop. I don't want anything basically interrupting me. Like last week, I was actually working on animated wallpapers, and I bought like a $3 wallpaper engine creator from Steam, and I was taking a picture from one of my novels that I generated, and I was adding snow and parallax movement to it, and
That's so cool.
it looked awesome.
Yeah.
And then I would notice over the last couple of weeks of doing this, I'll be thinking about stuff and I'll be in calls, and then I will notice something moved, and I'll notice the background
Shift your
and-
attention
and lose my attention a little bit. And then, oh, it's a good thing. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I've just now lost
Yep.
that little bit of an edge. Anyhow,
Mhm.
so where am I going with all of this? It's like, okay, no notifications, grayscale, no backgrounds. I'm trying to eliminate and, of course, maintaining a very neat environment. I want nothing to like interrupt me so that I can stay focused. And that's mostly as far as work goes. What I've also been doing in the mornings, and we've talked about this, where I will start first thing in the morning is come downstairs and I will do the Liturgy of the Hours. I found a YouTube video, so I'll sing along with that, and it shows up every morning, which is great because I just don't have the patience to hunt it down or find something. So it's nice that I get to sing along. And then what I'll do is I'll chant the rosary like right after it, monotone, just plain chant the whole way through. And I think it's good for me. It's been good. I think that my self, my body really enjoys the chance to participate in prayer like this
Yeah.
and not have it just be up inside my skull and in silence and so on.
Yeah.
And then what I'm now doing after that, I've been doing it this past week, is I have it's like a 15 to 20 minute series of, what do you call them? They're like exercises, Tai Chi motions
Okay,
and
yeah.
movements. So
Yep.
stretching your backbone, flexing, and they're all
So good.
gentle and they're all slow. And I can't say that I've noticed like, oh, my days are radically different adding all of this stuff.
Sure.
I think that I feel, how do I say this? It's like when you feel healthy, you feel yourself less.
Yeah.
You actually pay attention to yourself less because you're able to be more engaged
And
in what you're
life becomes
doing.
more the focus versus yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you're feeling bad is when your awareness is now more on you. And I've noticed I'm now paying less attention to myself.
Yeah.
I'm back into writing. So I'll go from that exercise and that session in prayer, and then I'm now writing for about an hour in the morning, and then now try to get into the rest of my day and try to keep that carefully scheduled. And so doing those things, trying to spend time doing things that are spiritually meaningful. Like I know in an absolute sense, these are really good for me. And then 2, I don't want to be hacked anymore because this routinely happens. And then 3 is keep writing every day.
Yeah, just getting the body
Yeah.
and mind involved. It's so funny. I was thinking about that for our men's group. We were watching this documentary on Carthusian monks in Korea. I think we talked briefly about it. And it's so funny how when you think of a life that is completely isolated, I say isolated in quotes because I mean just from modern distractions and silent. So you think you're not communicating a lot. It's a lot of interior life.
Mhm.
And yet they live such a full life, and you hear them talk about that. They do have moments where they can talk, and the moments they talk, they say they have such a rich life because one, they're obviously they're fulfilling their life's purpose. That's a very high call that they're fulfilling, which is one. 2, they're in community with other like-minded individuals doing the same thing, so that's also met. But they're using their body daily
Mhm.
to praise the Lord in their and when they garden, when they sew, they say everything they do is a prayer. And
Mhm.
so their whole body and movement is all oriented towards God, which
Mhm.
is so interesting because you think about your day, like even my day, I work from home.
Mhm.
A lot of times I'm not using my body a lot. I work from a desk.
Mhm.
Um
I can't get rid
and
of this
yeah,
tire here.
exactly.
Also, push-ups. Try to do push-ups every day. I
Yep,
gotta beat you.
got
I want to
it.
get up to 100 a day.
Well, I will do that. Yeah, I would love to do the push-ups. But yeah, using your body. But yeah, I'm saying when we orientate, that's the word. Orient ourselves. You call me with the reward. Towards God and using it purposefully, like so, chanting and Tai Chi and movements.
Mhm.
It takes our minds out of ourselves and into what's actually going on. I think
Mhm.
it's very fascinating. So yeah, and a list of other things. Definitely want to move more, exercise, go for runs,
Mhm.
push-ups, but be more purposeful too. I
Mhm.
like the idea of one, like you said, setting up your day. I like the old Father Larry Richards, no Bible, no breakfast, no Bible, no bed. I've been trying to live that as much as I can. So reading before the first thing I do, but also throughout the day being very purposeful and
Mhm.
mindful. And that, like, okay, I'm about to write emails for
Mhm.
an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
This next hour of emails I'm dedicating to
Mhm.
to so and so, or I'm in prayer. Um, just putting purpose to things, and not
Mhm.
just that's. I feel like I'm getting hacked when you're doing things mindlessly.
Yeah,
But if I'm
yeah.
purposely doing it, like, no, I'm in control of this, and I'm purposely doing this, it puts intention towards it.
Mhm. I like something Chris Mann said. Um, we talked about going to mass on purpose as opposed to by
Yeah,
default. And so
so good.
I've been scaling that up and like, well, what if I just do everything? Like, what if I go to bed on purpose as
Mm,
opposed to like, just got to collapse into it and then just
yeah,
wait? It's like, no, what if I start living more on purpose? And so, hey, here's the other resolution, which is this show. We'd like to start doing this every
yeah,
Monday. We kick off our weeks kind of as a way to check in after the weekend. Um, it's kind of an accountability thing.
yeah,
Just to keep checking in and talking about this stuff. Like like you and I talk all the time about how creativity matters and is important and it's valuable to us. But then we take all of that and then we sacrifice it at the altar of keeping our families fed. And
yep,
okay, there's not everything needs to be burned up though. It is also it's vital for us to find
yeah,
our own edge, corner, space, or something.
yeah,
Because the worst case scenarios, like I was doing like so many notes like over the weekend, writing down, trying to think through what do I want to say this year, what do I want to talk about this year, stuff like that. And one of the questions was great. It's like, what is the worst future? What is the thing you never want to happen? And I made a list of just things that are like my personal enemies, like in life. Where do I want to end up and not end up? And so, and just realizing I don't want to continue to sort of having this feeling of being trapped, bitter,
Yeah.
unable to escape, and being burned out.
Yes.
Which I don't want to necessarily blame the job and life situations and stuff. As I was writing down a lot of my enemies and dreams and goals and stuff, I realized a ton of this is my own attitude, which means I don't have to wait for anything or anybody else. So I am losing my internal peace or my sense of self-satisfaction or my ability to be creative. I'm losing all of that routinely because I am not in trying to take not just control of my own life. There's a way where we like radically like overdo that idea. But I am not exerting or creating control over the parts of my life where I should be. And instead, I am just bleeding out because I have no discipline and self-control over my monkey mind and my time management and my attitude.
Yep.
So what happens if I fix that? Who do I become, right? How does my attitude towards my job change, my creativity? Does not just productivity, but doing things on purpose? So that stuff sort of reeling around, and this having a show like this, partly to have fun, partly to get real about stuff, and maybe to invite the whoever's watching, join in with us, chime in on the comments, say hi, and maybe we'll just have some fun together. But
Yeah. Because that's the whole, a lot of the essence too of what we talk about is that there's, in the Catholic sense, but in the universal sense, or just a world, there's a life worth living here, and there's so much joy in the small things and the big things, and there's arts and the creativity, but there's always something to look forward to, and I think that can get lost so easily, especially in being a father of any amount of kids, because you're so focused on responsibility in the here and the now, and like got to take care of I was just talking about that with my wife last night, that for so long you get into this rhythm of like just taking care of the moment, because there's a cry, so you have to take care of it, versus like taking that step back and just saying like, oh, there is a world, like there's a world to be explored, and there's a life to be lived, and it's not always putting out fires. And though like there's seasons of that, which we get, there's like last night, like our daughter we could put her to bed and she's crying. It's like, and she was up for an hour or two just crying, like you have to go back and forth and soothe her, and like there's times like that. But then once you do put her down and she does fall asleep, like there's rest, and there's the day comes again, and like life goes on. And like I think hopefully these conversations that comes to light, there's little, like when we talk about books, like though there's craziness and stress and all that stuff, there's still good, there's still beautiful things to be enjoyed.
So talking about looking forward, looking ahead to good stuff, let's talk about that. There's a question that came up about what you just said. I'm trying to see if I can remember it, and I can't. I think it's gone. So let's talk about movies and books and games and stuff like that. So over this past weekend, this Christmas holiday, do you watch anything or do anything fun along those lines?
Yes, because finally it goes back to exploring interests, and I was like, whenever it comes to books, I have this list of books I think I should read, like Plato and Aristotle, and all the good books that every man should read in his life, or every good Catholic should read, and they're all good, and they're great, and they're enjoyable in their own right. I was thinking to myself, I haven't had a book that I just enjoyed just for myself. That is, I'm thinking about Harry Potter. The last time when I read Harry Potter for the first time, like zipped through it, just ate it up, and it was just immersed in a world of fun. So we went to the store. I was like, I'm going to look for a book. I'm going to go into the young adult section. I'm going to go to every section. I'm going to go to the section and find a book that just speaks to me. And I don't care who sees. I don't care what it's about. Again, just a book that I enjoy. So I found this book called The Inheritance Games. And if you've heard it or read it, loving it, zipping through it. It is such a fun. I'm a fan of mysteries and riddles. It's not a murder mystery, so I love Agatha Christie. But this is the gist is this random girl inherits billions of dollars from this rich man in Texas, and the family gets nothing, and she has to figure out why she was picked, what's going on with this family. There's a lot of like ins and outs of the family. There's devious things and loopholes and mysteries, and the house itself is a big mystery. And so it's these two forces. This girl's trying to figure out why she was picked. The family's
Mhm.
trying to figure out why she was picked.
Mhm.
They both think the other side is, in it for, murder or, some sort of power. It's just a fun it's just a fun setup, and I've loved it.
Nice.
I wake up looking forward to reading it, and yeah, it definitely looks like, and there's like 4 books,
Mhm.
and it seems like down the line it could be like a Netflix series, like a mini series.
Nice.
I'm
Okay.
excited about that. But yeah, loving it.
That is
Loving it.
fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. I don't think I have a book that I've been not fiction. I was actually kind of thinking about if I were to make a list of like 3 historical novels that I've read that I am really glad I read.
Yeah.
And I would actually like to think everybody should read them if they want to understand like a specific people or a time, because we operate on our understanding of like the past or history or how humanity works, how we work ourselves. But the oh my gosh, this is a whole conversation. We don't need to get into this. The way that we live today, in very many ways, is very, very thinned out, and it's inhumane, and it doesn't incorporate the fullness of what it means to be a human person. And we've normalized that. We operate like this is the way it is, and then we go look at ancient cultures and like, man, they were tripping on something. Like, I'll have 2 of those, please.
Yeah.
So there's a novel called The Winged Pharaoh, I think it's called, and it's a fictionalized story of a girl who is trained to become pharaoh in some point of the kingdoms, and she is also somebody who is because in the ancient world pharaohs and high priests were like worked very closely together, and the pharaoh is usually the highest priest. With Israel is when that started to I think is when that separated, and God created like 2 distinct institutions, something like that. But with the ancient world, like the Pharaoh was one of the highest priests or something, who had very specific and sacred roles. Anyhow, so she's also she's a healer, she's a dream traveler, very much of a shaman, and it's fascinating to read and understand how the Egyptians thought about themselves on their own terms. I think that the book loves Egyptians a lot, and so it feels a little bit utopian, if not a lot of it utopian. But it was not something obvious to me as I'm growing up reading about ancient Egypt and loving it. So that was one. And then another one, just right around the same time period, it's called The Red Tent, which is written by a woman, I don't remember her name. I think she's like a genius in Jewish studies or Hebrew studies or something. And this is a story about also a girl actually becoming a woman during, I think she's the wife of Jacob, maybe, or daughter of Jacob. Now it's been 2 years since I've read it. Anyhow, that gave me insights into, I guess you could say, the inner lives of women in ways I did not understand before.
That's
I am insanely glad now to have read it. And also it gives you deep insights into more of the syncretistic attitude of how the ancient Hebrews were as they were becoming more like the Hebrews that we know later on, and how, where the healthy paganism was that they were living, and how that was starting to integrate and transform, and what they were bringing with them. So to understand, like, me as a guy, to understand women from the inside out, and then in a specific time and place, like, that was insanely valuable. Anyhow, I'm trying to think of the third one, but those were 2 books that I read either this, actually, Winged Pharaoh was this past year. I think Red Tent was probably last year.
And these are you said fiction novels, right?
Yeah, they're fiction. My gosh, her story is like, it's harsh and a rough story. She ends up being enduring an incredible, actually both of them endure an incredible amount of pain, which is what ends up broadening them and maturing them. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you read these books, did it feel like, I was thinking about, I'm trying to picture this in my mind. Did it feel like you were watching a movie and you're seeing new scenes, or a documentary where you're learning new? Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it's a movie. Like, none of this feels like
I don't mean
going
that
to school or learning.
Either way, I meant more like, so in a documentary, I guess my mind says, like, is it like, whoa, like, this is like, I want to know more because this is all new? Or is it like wow, this is so interesting?
It's like entering a fantasy world. It's like walking through the wardrobe into Narnia, and you're like, I thought I knew this world. And then to discover this is massive and deep. And then 2, this is not a fantasy world. These are fictional narratives, but they're set in our reality. But I am now like anemic and blinkered to massive amounts of reality. What goes into that? Anyhow, that goes. Okay, so my turn to try to answer the question I put to you. What did I watch over this Christmas weekend? Because I want to come back and ask about interests this past year. What is something that like this past year you found yourself learning about that maybe you didn't expect to, or it was really cool? So as a topic sort of in general, let's come back to that. Okay, what did I watch? I've been trying to actually remember. There's a series on Prime that I binged called Rogue Heroes, and it's actually about the formation of the SAS during the Second World War.
Oh.
And it is phenomenal. Like I loved it. Like I loved every episode. High octane, loads of action, loads of violence and stuff like that. And it's about this team during the Second World War that was put together. They were realizing there's no way we can win this war because the Nazis and the Italians have control of north of Africa, and the British could not stop their advance. And so they realized, look, there's a 500-mile supply train. That is way too thin to maintain. And so they came up with this insane idea of parachuting. This has never been done before. Parachuting untrained men with a license to kill deep out into the desert where nobody could see them, and then having them trek up and hit that supply chain to amputate the Nazis' ability to supply themselves. And they ended up turning the tide of the war and became an official regiment. And now, of course, I think that the SAS has gone on to be like one of the gold standards for military operations,
That's cool.
covert operations, stuff like that. So cool. Okay, so not only is that just like, wow, dramatic story, what I loved most about it is that the characters... okay, to make this point, I have to also talk about a bit of context. Okay, I grew up in Australia and New Zealand, so I grew up with a lot of British influence. And the Brits have done an amazing job, I guess, of maintaining, they do this so much better than Americans in the First World, maintaining their sense of connection to their past, to their history, to the sacrifices and the pain, to the, what people have gone through in the past. It continues to be a lot more present and alive. Now you can ask, well, how or why, and does the average person do this? Like, I don't know. But in terms of the shows and the books, either that I read or that I was exposed to and so on, that sense of what it was like to be an adult, having gone through these two world wars, the attitude of what it is to be a British person. And there's a specific attitude and charism to being British that is not American, that is very distinctively them. And a lot of us love it. Some of us can't stand it, whatever. So I love that. There is a very distinct maturity, I find, to that. Now, reason why this matters to me is because then I now moved to America, and I'm trying to watch and keep watching all kinds of shows all the time. You now see in Hollywood, there's this this general reduction of maturity in our characters. I remember watching, maybe it was the Crazy Drinker. I can't remember. He's a movie reviewer. I can't remember his name. Irish drinker, Scottish drinker. Anyhow, and he talked about, I think he was him, talking about maturity in movies and how, and a case example was Star Trek. And he showed when chaos was happening on the bridge in the early series, the characters were like very self-composed and stuff was tense, but they like thought through and argued through and found a solution to whatever. And then they cut to like the newer Star Trek series with the newest, the glossy ones with Lens Flare's director. What's his name? I forget. Anyway, the big hits and stuff. And the flares of anger and of, frankly, immaturity. Like the characters are not emotionally composed. They're not sort of self-disciplined. They're children in adult positions. And then they rage and react and they fight and they punch each other like it's grade school. So to then now watch this show where the characters are quintessentially British in the sense of who they were before the First and Second World Wars, there's this desire for like self-composure, for an inordinate sense of self-sacrifice from the leaders, the captains. I learned this afterwards, that these are men who are not only trained in classical education, but they're reading people like the exploits of Alexander and all the great heroes and King Arthur of the age of the old times. And I learned afterwards that Alexander and his army were once, I think, in the Gobi Desert, and they were out of water, and somebody brought him like a helmet of water for him to drink, because he's the sacred king. And he took that water, and he saw nobody else had water around him, and he poured out that water, and then everybody was like juiced to see their king, suffering along with them. This was not something that happened. And there's a scene in the show where one of the characters did exactly the same thing. Like, he had to prove to them that he had not only done the thing, but he would also suffer with them because they were all out of water. He poured out all the remainder that he had and showed no reaction. There's the sense of self-composure, but there's also this sense of dry wit, and there's this devil-may-care attitude, which is what it takes to be characters like this.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Enneagram in the past. These guys are solid 8s, and they pull together a team of rambunctious, piratical 8s to go out and do something that nobody else would have the gumption to survive doing. Okay,
I'm saying
so much fun.
Yeah, I love the point you made about like I resonate with the British versus American presentation and poise, and it's like I think of like James Bond and even like the Kingsman or Downton Abbey. Like I was like the portrayal of like someone who is calm and collected is always reserved as strong and dignified. And anybody, even in Downton Abbey, like there's scenes like from the rebel or the rabble, the downstairs, like when they lose their temper, they're showed as weak. And even like James Bond, like he always very composed, and like the villain is always very like extravagant and boisterous and like explosive, and it's just like that's a sign of and like in the American culture though there is an element of that, but then you have our heroes like Hulk. His main power is how he's strong because he rages, and it's just funny how that depiction. I never thought of that until especially like a James Bond character. Like that's his whole thing. It's like he's poised and posed and doesn't lose his temper. And when he does, that's like you can see that that's the weakness. That's very interesting. I was just thinking about that, especially with Downton Abbey, because I love that show.
Yeah. So I love that. The characters themselves are insanely compelling, and the fun thing about the main character is that his father was a war hero from a line of war heroes, and so now he's got this massive pressure on him in a war that has suddenly become global, and he must make a name for himself, and then he pulls together a team of amazing people to help him become a war hero, and then all of them outstrip him and excel against him, and he can't even catch up. And so there's that burning, like, now I got to show up my own team, and I have to be better than my own team, and like I can't. His very first parachuting exploit has him crushing part of his spine, and he's then laid up for like with a walking stick for like 2 episodes, and so apparently there's going to be a new season.
Is this just one season out so far?
So it's like 6 episodes, each is an hour long or so. I think it ended saying to be continued. And the amazing fun thing is every episode says most of these episodes, these exploits are true. It's not just totally Hollywood stuff. Trying to remember if there's anything else that I watched. And I know there was stuff, there's podcasts to listen to, but books I'm reading. But that was a distinct fun thing.
Yeah.
How about you? Any movies you watched?
We did. What did we watch? We watched. I mean, it's coming out of Christmas. We watched a lot of Christmas movies. Some old classics, and an older one we never saw before, While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock.
Okay.
Like from the 90s. It was cute because one, it's just a nice Christmas movie, but her name in the movie is Lucille Eleanor, and that's the name of our daughter. So that was a cool little connection. And they're a Catholic family. It's just an interesting, like, I'd never even seen the movie before. But that was fun. We didn't watch any like mind blowing movies. We watched a lot of like Christmas movies. We watched a lot of comedians. Kind of a fun time. I'm trying to think. There was one. There was one movie we watched, but I cannot remember it. How memorable it was. But we've been playing. For me, I'll ask you about your movies, but I've been playing video games again, and that was the new kind of like spark of fun. But
so, what are you playing?
The new Zelda. Well, new. I say new. It's the newer Zelda game. It's the Tears of Kingdom.
Nice.
Tears of the Kingdom, And it's just one of those games. Obviously, there's a nostalgia appeal. I played Zelda when I was little, so I like that. And it's not
Mhm.
the same format. It's an open world game, but just I love games that have good art and good story and
Mhm.
good, so the graphics are fun. Like it's, with this day and age, you could have graphics that are like, replications of life. They're so
Mhm.
clear, but this is more of an art style.
Mhm.
That's fun, and the game itself is enjoyable, and you just get to just explore. And again, it's one of those things that I'm like, you know what? These games, what games should I be playing? Like, well, let's
Mhm.
throw that out the window. What
Yeah.
games do you want to play?
Yeah.
And it's a game I just love playing. Our kids all watch. They said, "Dad, can you play Zelda?" So it's a win-win. I get to have some family time. They all get to watch. And
Yeah.
I get to play a video game.
That's fun.
Um, but yeah, just been doing that, and it's just enjoying that
Mhm.
storyline. And you forget that I forget that video games actually have storylines as well that are very good.
Mhm.
And the Zelda story, if anybody knows it, it's a very fun fantasy story. The princess gets captured. This rogue knight has to go try and find her and save her from this evil presence. So there's a lot of like fun themes, and you get to live it, and you get to or
Mhm.
experience not live it. You get to
Mhm.
play it and experience it. So that's a high recommend. And then a cozy game for any time of year is which we've played as Tiny Glade.
Mhm.
Just a very peaceful, good music, good,
Yeah.
you know,
I've
art
been looking
style.
for like a game where we could like kind of play it together
I
as a
know.
foil for like while we're talking about stuff. I couldn't find, maybe it's Tiny Glade, but
They should
yeah.
come out with a way that you can collaborate
Oh,
together.
co-op, that's fun. Yeah.
I bet they will. I mean, that game, is as far as like an indie game, there's these two people out of I think Sweden made this
Mhm.
game, and it exploded because it scratches that itch
Mhm.
so well,
Mhm.
with the sounds, the way you're just building this little like it's peaceful. There's no points, there's no score, it's
Yeah.
just do, and it's like it's a very like fun, relaxing game.
Yeah. I've seen the thumbnails that sort of go by where people have built like full on
Oh my
Hogwarts
gosh,
builds or Rivendell, like these
yeah.
stunning stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like if anybody with even a slight sense of artistic
mhm.
inclination gets a hold of it, they go wild, which is awesome. It's so cool to see. But
It's funny how just the tools that they've offered are so simple,
yeah,
but an artist is somebody who can take like really simple tools and then
yeah.
do amazing things with them. Um, yeah, it's funny. I was swiping Instagram and I saw a reel for like 3 seconds and I swiped again and then it came back to me afterwards, which was one guy said, I just started walking playing Red Dead Redemption, something like that. Instead of like racing to get everywhere, I
Yeah,
started walking between things.
yeah.
And he's like, it was meditative and it's changed my life. Swipe. Wait, no, that was interesting. Go back. He's like,
Changed my
whose
life.
side are
Who
you on
cares?
anyway? It's like my thumb's in control. So there's a game that I've been very slowly chipping away at called, hold on, see if I can I can remember the name of the thing. Kina Bridge of Spirits. And it's this
Oh,
beautiful game. Um, and the character is a young girl who is in training to become like a spirit guide or a spirit rescuer because in
cool.
this ancient kind of shamanic Maori native gorgeous forested landscape, there's villages, and then there's people's spirits are trapped in this forest and they need help letting go and then moving on in their journey up to the mountain shrine and further in their spiritual journey. And so her job, it's a lonely one away from
Mhm.
all the rest of civilization to go around hunting for these spirits to release them and help them move past.
Oh, I'm
And
in.
sometimes, spirits like these people have been through traumatic situations and they've become locked down to a specific area and soured and become evil. And so there's a little bit of battle and you get to fight things
That's
and so on.
cool.
So I just finished like the first, I don't know, sort of level
Yeah.
last night, and then a new doorway opened up, and so I'll go explore that. It's visually stunning. The music is beautiful. I love the mentality that it creates of like running around. There's shrines everywhere. Like you're running around in a world that is not dead. The world is thick and alive with a lot of things you can't see. And we've crafted
Well.
shrines and candles and carved sigils on stones
Yeah.
everywhere as reminders of the cloud of witnesses that, observes us and is attentive and engages with us at all times.
How interesting.
So it's beautiful. And the reason why I say all of that is because there was one moment yesterday where I'm like, gosh, she's going so slow, and I'm mashing the control button to get her to jump ahead because I want to get.
Go.
And then I remembered that reel. It's like, what if I just make her walk?
Yes.
And I look around while I'm doing it. All of a sudden, wow, the forests are gorgeous. A little bit of thunder in the background.
That's so funny.
I feel like I'm slowing down.
Yeah.
Huh.
Actually,
maybe there's something to this.
That's what I was playing Zelda, and a lot of times I'll skip through cutscenes sometimes, and but I'm like,
Yeah.
no, like let's just enjoy this story that someone has, not someone, many people have worked a lot of hours on, and just sit there, and we were just watching, and then even the kids were like getting into it. I'm like, just like relax, enjoy it. Like why rush like this game, which I'm gonna beat at some point? Why rush it? If it's gonna, if you're gonna have a week of enjoyment because I rush it, or a month, might as well do it a month because you get more enjoyment out of it. And it's funny that's something I was reading this book. It's called The Anxious Perfectionist. A little insight into my personal psyche, but basically the one thing it was focusing on is how we're so outcome focused versus the process, and that's where a lot of perfectionism comes from. Is isolating or hyperfixating on the outcome of things, and how we want to control the outcome versus we can control a process or enjoy a process. It's always like, it's not the destination, it's the journey. But really kind of settling with that this week, and like it kind of manifested in this game, like let's just chill, let's enjoy it, let's see what this looks like. And you get so much more out of it, out of anything. And like that's even like, I've even heard somebody say, when you eat your food, like I used to do this a lot when on my previous job, I'd eat while I was working. And so, no, separate those two activities, really enjoy the food, and just sit and be and experience. And that's another thing that the Carthusian monks, throwback to them, all they eat is rice and vegetables. They're all vegetarian and very simple meals. That's part of their code, is very is simplicity. But even with a bowl of rice, they sit and they pray while they eat it in silence. And a bowl of rice, which with no, I think maybe salt, maybe, but a simple meal becomes a full experience. It's funny how I've breezed through, pizza or sushi or whatever while I'm eating, but you can enjoy it so much more if you just sit and be with it and experience all of it. So taking that and apply it to everywhere, well, games become fuller, movies become richer, books become, that much more, that's another thing, to tie back to the book. I was like, I have the audiobook. Like, why don't I just listen to the audiobook? I'll put it on 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed, go for a walk. I'm like, no, why rush this wonderful experience I'm having? Really just go through every word and not breeze through it. Cause I try to think like, I want to read a lot of books, so I try to be a speed reader, but I'm like, no, I can with other books, sure. But for this one, just enjoy it. Like really like let those dialogue, those scenes of dialogue like last and like hit.
Yeah. And there's I don't remember what this was. It was probably a bit of a YouTube video, and I just kept watching because it was an Orthodox priest, I think, who was talking about, not that means anything. He was talking about games, I think, and he talked about, I think he was talking about the dangers of games and how they're destroying us or something. It's like, and I realized he made this one little point where he's like, games are, they're things we can turn to for relaxation and for sort of some mindless fun or something. And I haven't processed this yet, and so maybe let's do this now. But I dislike lumping all games into this sense that the only good game is something that is harmless and effectively mindless, and you can do it. It's like an escape from things. That's actually the purpose of games. But if you were actually like a real grown-up and you had your life put together, you would be doing a lot more praying, and you'd be chanting and singing and stuff. You'd be like, you wouldn't be gaming.
No.
And I don't know what I think about that. I don't think that I agree with that, and trying to like pull on that thread and maybe see why. I think people who say that sort of thing, it's like people who do the same thing for movies. Like, movies are nice for a little relaxation. It's like, don't watch Game of Thrones for a little relaxation. You just had a bad day at work and you come home and you watch Helm's Deep. It's like, yeah, okay, there's something else that's going on here. Some cozy gaming is like that. And there's a reason why it's like a revolution now, and it's really taken off. And I think that's phenomenal. And there's a whole conversation.
Yeah.
But not all games are cozy. Not all games are mindless. Some are very intensive and intentional. And
Yeah.
so, what is going on with that? When I hear people say that sort of thing, like this is the best thing that they can say about a game or a book or a movie or media or creativity like this, is like, yeah, it's good for a little mindlessness, be when you're, when you need a little consolation because you're so far down the spiritual journey that you
Yeah.
need a little hit of something,
Yep.
to keep you on playing the game. It's like, no, I think that is, you don't know what this medium is or what this
Mhm.
space is
Yeah.
and what it can contribute.
Yep.
And this really hit me when I was watching a playthrough for God of War, the first Viking God of War. I don't think it was Ragnarok. Maybe it was. I don't remember. And there's this moment where he walks into this gorgeous hall of Valhalla. And it's a very materialist kind of take on the whole mythology. I don't know that they fully understand Viking mythology, but they've co-opted it to do something
Yeah.
really fun with it. And it was in that moment where I realized, I think it's Lewis or Chesterton, probably Lewis. I don't remember. Has this sense of, or no, it was Tolkien, who says there's a difference between the flight of the deserter and the escape of the prisoner. And a lot of people, especially hyper-religious people who are not big enough dorks, will look at everything that fiction has to provide and they'll go, oh, look at this. It's just the escape of the prisoner. Or sorry, no, it's the flight of the deserter. You have a commitment to your post in reality, and you're just hopping on your little brain trip and you're going off and wasting time. It's like a permissible waste of time. And he's like, I can tolerate it. Like, no, as opposed to the escape of the prisoner, like in oh gosh, what movie was it? Maybe it was The Great Escape, which I grew up watching, where it's like it's a soldier's obligation to try to escape from confinement and get back to your side of the war so that you can continue to fight the good fight. And the world that we live in right now, in the way that our culture is constructed, it's excessively inhuman in the sense that it does not incorporate all of our humanity. And what it means to be human. But then you still have to go to work and function and live and thrive and succeed by playing this game that after 50, 60 years wipes you out and burns you out, and just turns you into a mindless drone, the kind of thing that terrifies, especially a lot of, maybe you're in my age group, like looking at a future of 60 years of this and going, I don't want to play this game.
No,
You can't win. And then, it just seems pointless, burnout. So, well, what can you do if you can't physically change your environment? Well, you can change it on the inside. You can change your attitude on the inside. And this is what I think is happening with a lot of games today. At least the ones that I'm seeing. There are stupid games, sure. There are games that are mindless, sure. I'm not saying this for all games. There are some games that I would probably never want to play. I don't even, it's not, nobody asked me, but I don't know if they should even exist, if they're even like healthy for the human condition. That is a whole conversation. But there are some games that are like the psychicness in them, the spiritual tone in them. It's not obvious, but as you play through, the game starts to change you. Because what is a game? It's like you're intentionally living out a series of actions towards a purpose. Where am I going with ultimately all of this, I think?
Well, you know what?
Go ahead, interrupt.
I was going to say, you remember, you made me think of and this is hopefully bring it in if I'm going off too far, but it's like the thought that there's these gaps in life, and hopefully I'm going to pull this all together. So when you say like, video games are this mindless escape, and like, you're not actually like, okay, yeah, do that and then get back to life. It's like do that and then get back to life. That thought of like you're putting life on pause, what you should be doing, and you're doing this mindlessness and whatever. And I thought of it, and again, hopefully this all comes together. In musicals, I always used to think when in musicals that are not all song, when there's talking and then song, I always like Disney movies or whatever.
Just
I'd be like,
tolerate the
the song will come out, I'm like,
breakdancing.
"Oh,
Yeah.
all right, well, the movies, the story's
Yeah.
on pause, now they're gonna do the song, and I can't wait till it starts again." I used to think this with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm.
One of my favorite movies, from the 70s or 60s with Gene Wilder, and when the mom sings, it's, like, the most boring thing in the world, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, like, just get
I
back to the
think
story."
for us kids, like all of every cutaway to a grown up
Oh, you're
in
like,
those
"Come
70s,
on."
80s movies, like this is
Oh,
boring stuff. It's like
skip, 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 skip.
Home Alone. It's like, why? I don't
Exactly.
care about the mom screaming in an airport. Let's just get back to Kevin. Like,
Exactly. But so the point is that like all these things are thought of like it's distracting from the main story. Like just get back to the storyline. But then it wasn't until, and I'm gonna hopefully bring this back, Hamilton, where everything is song, and you
mm,
think like, oh no, these aren't like pauses of the story; these are continuations of the story.
mhm,
That the story goes on; it's a different style, but you still life is happening. And
mhm,
so I think of that with video games or
mhm,
anything that's again to a degree. There's obviously things you can get lost in, you get addicted to that further you, but those are not gaps in life. Like, okay, do your
mhm,
video game, then get back to what you're supposed to be doing. No, those are
mhm,
part of it. It's because that's an expressive outlet. It's a creative, endeavor. It's an enjoyment factor. It's relaxation. That's
mhm.
also part of life. And I was
Yeah.
having a conversation with my brother, talked about this a lot, and like, we always have these kind of themes of like, when we get our own house, then we'll be happy. Or when I finally get done with this
Mm,
debt, then we'll start living. When I finally get the new car, then we can. It's like always like these gaps of life. Like it's enjoyable. Oh, we're gonna resume once we get the house because right now it's not life. Life will
mhm,
start then. But that way of living, it never actually starts.
mhm,
You're always in this game of like, oh, there's always gonna be. It's gonna start when this is happening. And when this happens, I'll be happy.
mhm,
And it was a thing that he kinda said in passing, but it really kinda stuck with me, and it's a cliche phrase, "Life is where you are." And,
mhm,
like, that and I kinda took that to heart, and I remember and so, going back when we used to live in a town, when we first got married, we lived in this apartment in a town, and I was like, "You know what? I'm not gonna try and make friends here. This is only temporary." You kinda like, "I'm not gonna start being connected to things because 'cause we're just gonna move."
mhm.
We ended up being there for 9 years. 9 years, and in that entire time, I thought, like, "Well, this isn't home, so, like, we'll start connecting with the community, we'll start making friends, we'll start doing things when we move, because that's
Yeah.
when life really happens."
Mhm,
I missed 9 and again, it was we enjoyed it, but we missed 9 years of doing life and actually connecting with the environment because we were there, and
mhm.
it's so funny, like, we finally got connected with some people and we moved, but we're still
Oh,
friends with them.
yeah.
But the whole point again, so going back to video games and escapism and like in this kind of timing of life is in these cutscenes, like enjoy all of it because it's
Mhm,
all life.
mhm,
When you're playing the video games, when you're in a certain scenario, like like even right now, we're not in our forever home.
mhm,
But do we just say like, oh well, let's not try and enjoy this because this is forever? No, like life is still happening. Life is
mhm,
now, and take those moments and not try and fast forward because like that's what I was doing for 9 years, like, just fast forward. We're not don't even try and, like, enjoy don't go for walks because we're not gonna be here for long, whatever.
mhm,
I think that's important, and that's, this new year especially, and with these video games and creative endeavors, like, taking the moment to stop, see,
mhm.
and enjoy, because
Yeah.
there's so much, and you're just fast forwarding through actually all the good parts.
Mhm. Gosh. There's a whole line of thinking. Um, well, this is actually another New Year's resolution that I've had as well, which is, again, noticing myself and wanting to be kind of unhackable, but more like,
Yeah.
no, I've noticed when I read specific people or engage in specific topics, I can feel myself coming back to life and my
Yeah.
creativity starts working again. And so it's that feeding of myself, right? Which this past year I've done a very bad job of in many ways. I mean, it has been an insane year. You and I were just looking at our messenger thread for like just the last 4 months. Like,
Yeah.
dang, an insane amount happened. It's like, yeah, for everybody. But just if you're not at home, like within yourself, and if you're not a master of your own, self or body, then you routinely, and this is, I felt like everything is happening at me or to me, and it's like I'm a boat flapping about in a storm. None of my sails are tied down. That is an exhausting situation for a human person to be in, as opposed to your hands on the rudder, sails tied down, and you're aiming intentionally into the storm to ride them through. Completely different experience, So that's what I'm trying to do for the new year. So one of them being is reading the authors or that matter that feed me, because I notice
True. Yeah.
a day after reading that author, something clicks and comes back online and I can do stuff. So this is a conversation at some point I want to come back, maybe with you or maybe with a couple of different people, because it's like, this is going to be a long conversation, but it's like this idea that every story, no, how does this go? Line was washing dishes and it came to me. It's like all mythology is psychic or is psychology, but not in a reductive sense, like, oh, it's all brain juice squirting around inside your head. It's like, no, instead of trying to think of mythology in a reductive sense of like, these are immature expressions of how nature works, or people just trying to figure out how their own brains work, or accounting for the history of their peoples. Like, no, you will have a much easier time or a much deeper time understanding what mythology is if you understand it all as spiritual, psychic narratives and accounts of how reality works. And now if you go back and reread it all from that standpoint, Jordan Peterson's done a lot of this. Peterson is not as, at least in the beginning, is not as spiritual as he is now, but approaching it from the standpoint of like, all mythology is psychic, changes how you read and understand what mythology is trying to communicate. But now here's the thing. All stories are mythology. Even the most mindless and fun ones, even the silliest ones, or, I'm just like sitting in bed like over the weekend, or my wife and I were having a conversation, and we hit a lull in the conversation, so we're just watching the Netflix slides, promoting stuff, and I started looking at them, and I'm a designer, graphic designer, so I'm always thinking about how stuff is composed and realizing, this show is communicating this about itself. And that's when this other old thought comes back in, like, all art is iconography, in the sense that all art is communicating, not just trying to communicate something to you. That's what flattened, despiritualized marketing does. You're weaponizing the magic of visual communication. Well, if you restore back to it, like what is actually going on, not just what you think is going on, all art is iconography. It could be bad iconography, but what is an icon? It's a communication of not just an idea. That's too narrow. It's a communication of a view of reality, or a communication of reality done badly or done well.
Yeah.
And it can be of sacred things, which means they can be like Narnian portals to... let's not go there. That's a whole conversation. But just thinking about like art is realizing, well, if I decompose, if I can like unpack what is the mythology happening in this slide, what is the psychic meaning, psychological meaning, what is the spiritual meaning of this slide? It's like, oh, this is really interesting. I started doing that over and over and realized there's routine themes. And so in that case, we're in my wife's channel. And so it was showing her all the videos that she wants to watch. And so I'm like, I try to enter into what does all of this mean about how women see themselves from the inside. It's so different. Like she goes over, she hates going into my Netflix channel because it's all warfare stuff and like high stress octane action stuff. It's like, and I'm trying to think like, why is it that she wants this? Like, cause she operates differently in the world than I do. The mythology that she is living out is actually, it's different to where I am. They're not like in the sense of incompatible, but it's like a different starting point, different value, whatever. Again, there's a whole conversation. So just if I were to drop this sort of unpacked idea, all art is iconography, all stories are mythology, and all mythology is like communicating a psychic reality, something that is, and psychic in the sense of how the Greeks used it, psyche, meaning your soul. Oh gosh, I don't know where this line of thinking goes, but all of a sudden you can now approach almost every story and start to unpack and realize what is the myth that this story is communicating, because we live myth constantly. Your home is an idea. The country that you live in is a myth that we agree to live out together, or maybe some of us don't agree, and you deal with it. The local government is a myth that we're all living out together. So it's really, really intriguing. And to be able to use movies, I'm hoping what you and I can sort of do this year is like, as we keep watching movies, like, okay, what is not just the mythology of this movie, but it's like, What is the therapy that this movie brings?
Yeah.
Again, we're talking psychic level,
I
stuff. Go ahead.
I like that idea of I wrote it down. It'd be a cool idea for us to do like snapshot art review, or something that we either put up a piece in the middle, between us, pop
Mhm.
up the screen, a piece of art, and we give our review. What does
Yeah.
it compel us? How does it move us? What do we like about it? What we don't like
Be
about it?
kind of fun. Like you take a movie poster.
That's
Like
yeah.
we don't
Anything.
normally do this. It's like the
No.
idea that you have movie posters. So in among the Eastern and the Orthodox, they have what's called the iconostasis. I don't know if you're
Yep.
familiar with that. Okay, so for our delightful viewers who may not know what that means, in the Orthodox and Eastern Christian liturgies and traditions, they sort of hide or sort of gate off in a way the altar and the sacrifices of the rituals and the liturgy from the rest of the people, because the entire church is sacred space. It's all holy space. But then around the altar, and the altar itself is like the holy of holies. It's like super sacred space. And not everybody is permitted to have access to that. But at the same time, who is in that space and what is in that space wants to be radiated out and communicated out. But it's like trying to stare at the sun. It's so bright it blinds you into blackness. And so the mystics would call that the holy darkness, because you're not leveled up to a point where you can, like an eagle,
Yeah.
stare into the sun and be fine. So what do they have? Is they have the iconostasis, like putting a prism in front of the sunlight to refract it and diffract it out. And so the iconostasis is a wall. Sometimes it's sort of see-through. You can see through it a little bit, or maybe it's a solid wall with doors and stuff. And it's covered with icons and paintings and scenes from the Gospels and like the patron saints of this church and the specific saints or angels, maybe of that specific tradition. And you sort of it's like looking through all of that to start to discern, maybe to see the ultimate, the absolute divinity. So in the holy spaces, we call it we put all the icons on a wall, to draw your attention, to inform your attention. Well, in the outer world, and you could call it the sort of secular liturgy of how we go about. Man, there's a conversation. I'm trying to not get off in tangents. But if you go to movies,
Yes.
and book covers and visual media communication like that,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Even though we tell ourselves we have uprooted and torn out all the spiritual meaning from everything, and like it's just making money. It's like
Yeah.
you're still doing the same
Yeah.
thing. And so yes, this would be a very fun series of conversations to pull up a movie poster and go like, what is the implied stuff that speaks to your subconscious
Yeah.
that makes you decide, I want to spend time with that, and maybe I don't want to spend time with that? Like when you say, who am I marketing to? It's who are you trying to convince and appeal to?
I like the idea of like a Dom and Gabe score. So like, you have the review like and based up, and I like the different criteria. So like, compelling. I don't know what like 3 different like things, and it adds up to a total score. Would you if it for a
Would you
movie
watch it?
poster, yeah,
Yeah.
would you watch it? That's a good one. Do you like it, or yeah, so you break it down, but I was thinking of like movie posters, book covers. We could do those. Would you read it? But it's
Mm,
just based upon a book cover. So find books that we have not read and
mm,
put up the book cover. Be like, well, would you read it or would you not?
yeah.
What do you like about it? What feeling do you get from it? Because I was thinking like that. I do like I'm a very visual shopper when it comes to books. A
Mhm.
lot of times, and the first thing is the book cover, and it's that sense. What do you get when you see the cover? Like, what feeling do you get? So I think that'd be cool, and I think so. You do book covers, movie posters, and just artwork that we have never discussed or
Mm,
maybe possibly never seen before. I don't know how you would
yeah.
find that, but put it up in the middle. We give the Dom and Gabe score. It'd be fun to even do like a Da Vinci painting, and we give our scores.
Loads to talk about, loads to do. Okay. I guess the last thought or question.
Mm.
What has been an interest? So given everything we've talked about that
Yep.
fascinates us, what has been an interest this past year that you've been pursuing, maybe as a topic or as an idea, something you've been reading about, learning about? That just, I don't know, maybe you didn't find yourself learning about it, or it's a specific theme that you spent time with this past
Yeah.
year. What would you say?
Mine stems off of the resolution, which was very reflecting of self and trying to understand myself. And we've had many conversations over the year. And so one thing that really was fascinating me though is I was diving into what I consume and how that makes me. That old you are what you eat. But I was if you apply it to music, movies, what am I putting into myself? And like so, I changed over the course of the year the music I was listening to. Recognized I was listening to a lot of sad music. I like all different types of genres, but found a lot of sad music, and I realized that it was affecting me. And I'll kind of skim forward to one of the best things I transitioned was what type of music I listen to,
Mhm.
and being very cognizant of when I'm listening to music, what it is I'm listening to. So I'm okay with listening to any type of music, but just being very conscious of what I'm doing. Because a lot of times I'll just hit play and then not even realize what I'm kind of doing. Uh, so changed up by music and kind of learned a lot more about my relationship with God through music and what I was even accepting it for myself. In my value in God's eyes, and just a lot of big dynamic thoughts and questions,
Mhm.
and recognize that how big a role music plays in my life, in anybody's life, and how influential it is.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest things, one of the greatest gifts that I actually received was, uh, this internal conversation of like my value, my self worth. And my dad had wrote a poem, and we put it to music, and boy, did it hit home.
Really?
And it then this is something probably can even go into further discussion on a personal level. But the gist of it is for this setting is that um the music and the words tied together cut through every sort of barrier that I put up, and it really made me understand a message that was written. And I kind of like it opened my mind, like, what else can I like unlock through a certain medium and through a certain way of digesting something? And so I was like, what else like if this was so transformative, what else can I like unlock? And thinking of like we were talking about whole, scripture and the liturgy of the hours and chanting, and like that's why music is tied to scripture so well. And the Song of Songs, like we were having like that is why God gave us so many different meanings of expression of his love.
Mhm.
And it just kind of like hit me like in that way of just that one moment of like, oh, there's more to music than I've been even accepting it myself thus far. And that's when I started like, from your suggestion of chanting the Liturgy of the Hours and the Rosary, like what can I change in my life? And so listening to Gregorian chants and like filling myself with the beauty of
Mhm.
God's love versus the troubles of human toil. Like, like I think I've been like, kind of like
Yeah.
in that space for a little too long
Okay.
and forgetting that there is still a good, loving father.
Mhm.
So I hope that I kind of
Yeah,
ties
that's
back to
really cool.
that's the
Say
really
more
just
about that one thing I thought was interesting. You said you began to realize music has a lot more to communicate, or communicates a lot
yes,
more than you initially thought.
yes,
Pull on that for a minute.
that well, and it stemmed with when we were at mass. And, we're, singing hymns, and I'm thinking like, again, these cut scenes. Okay, just get through the hymns. I just want to get through to the Eucharist, or, just want to go to the readings. I like readings in the Eucharist. I could even do without the homily sometimes. But really I'm like, okay, let's take this as the mass is this whole package. It's not these cut scenes that you skip forward. It's like, let me take these hymns, this part of the
Mhm.
mass that is sometimes I don't connect with.
Mhm.
And then I really sat and like, and then thinking them as like prayers and like really as a deep part of the mass, I
Mhm.
loved it, and I started like really enjoying like singing every single part of it,
Mhm.
and it just and then they some of them moved me, which had never moved me before, and especially during this the Christmas Advent season and Christmas time, O come Emmanuel, like just these songs that just they opened up much more
Mhm.
because I was like, this is part of it too. Don't just skip over this. Participate and enjoy.
Mhm.
And that's when kind of again, so it's been on this thing of like music has so it cuts through so much deeper. I don't know why. It's one of these, I think, beautiful mysteries of life that I feel like I hear God much more when and then they sing the Psalms. It just
Mhm.
speaks so much differently. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow.
And even and at night, I usually sometimes I'll pray the Our Father, but sing the Our Father,
Hmm.
and it just resonates so much more. And I found a lot of times like I'll drift off to sleep so much more peaceful after in my head, because in church you sing the Our Father, and it's just so beautiful, and the words, I don't know why they speak so much louder.
Hmm. Wow. I
So
remember years back seeing a line in a prayer book for Mass, and it was like, don't pray at the Mass, pray the Mass.
yeah,
And I thought, okay, I'll give it a try.
I'll
This
give it a go.
boring cutscene anyway. That actually did start to become transformative to
Yeah.
actually pray along intentionally, not just, habitually. And
Be a
that did
part of it.
really started changing. Yeah. Goodness. For me,
Yeah, how about you?
if I were to pick, a lot of things happened this past year, a lot of interests. I was thinking of actually turning this into a video, and I might do this as a sort of a longer conversation. There's a book that I read called Bard Skull. Maybe it was a year ago, or it's just under a year ago. And the book I didn't know what to do with it. It really was brilliant. The author he's now become Orthodox. His name is Martin Shaw. And what I'm going to do is grab a couple of friends. We're going to start reading through that over at my Legend Fiction community. And do that as a live stream as well, and just talk through it. He's one of those authors, when I read, stuff opens up inside me. And so I'm deciding, okay, let's read more of him.
Yeah.
Because I like who I am when I'm feeding and putting that in. He ended this book, Bard Skull, with like a little challenge. And how do you say, like the point of, okay, what he's doing is everything we've talked about on this conversation, which is the sense that you come out of an extremely anemic worldview that does not incorporate everything outside of the visible spectrum of what we can see, touch, taste, and kick and kill. So he's somebody who he's a mythologist. He may even be a mystic. He'd probably never admit that. He seems like he is one. And he deeply understands the effect and impact of what stories are on the soul, on the psyche, and on our spirit. And so he went and he put himself through like a 30-day kind of thing where he went and he basically sat in his backyard in little copse of trees, and he told stories to the world, to himself, to the trees, to the world, inviting the angels and the spirits and the beings of that area to open up to him, to communicate, to teach, to talk, to share, and to learn. Because he does not live in a world where we are a smear of parasitical bacteria on a rock in space that means nothing. It's like, no, we are a level or a tier of consciousness with angels above us, fairies and lower conscious beings below us. And we are part of a continuum that goes from the absolute divinity of God that gets fractaled down through the angels and all the way down to the dreaming state that we call matter. And everything is alive and everything has a degree of consciousness. And I'm like, wow, that sounds really interesting. That's how the medievals lived. They called it the great chain of being. It's how all the ancient people sort of lived before the last 400 years kind of thing, before the Enlightenment. This was normal to them. And so he's somebody who is immersed in that world. And it's fascinating to me. And so anyhow, so I read this book about somebody getting into that headspace, literally getting into that skull. That's the skull of a bard. Somebody who is porous to all of the world.
Yep.
Without losing his sense of self and his sort of groundedness in goodness, And so the book is incredible. And then at the end, he has a little challenge. He's like, take 30 days. And he said, invite the teachers from, let's say, a 3-mile radius. And do this every day for like 30 days. Invite them to come and teach you. And so I put a little filter in there. I was like, in the Holy Spirit, everything good, come and teach me. Guardian angel, keep me safe. I don't want to invite everything in. So I did that for like about 30 days or something. Now, nothing actually happened over this past year. But here's what has happened. I have become more and more desirous to understand what is this world that I say I live in, that I give lip service to in the creed every Sunday and stuff. But I don't actually live like I don't act like I live in that world because I don't understand. You don't love, what you either don't understand or what you don't put sacrifice towards.
Yep.
Right? So if I were to distill it to like one word, it would be what is shamanism? Which is a shaman is like a bit actually like an author, somebody who is able to navigate and explore and understand and work with and help and collaborate with angelic realities within the mind, within the soul, within the nature of reality. And it's been something every single culture has had and has excelled at, or has had people who have excelled at. They function differently to the priests. They have a different role that they play in culture. Some of them, there's a whole conversation we can have about where maybe it can be dangerous and where maybe it can be really good and stuff like that. So I've just been trying to understand that. This is a side of comparative religion, or just of how religion works, that I don't fully understand. And the more I learn about it, then I like see things happening in like Moses' life. Like, man, those connect. Like, if I were to understand him from this point of view, stuff starts to open up. Meanings in mythology or in storytelling open up and have, in sacred scripture, all of a sudden take on a whole lot more meaning when we reintegrate stuff that the inspired authors had normalized as part of their lives that is not normalized in ours, is something that is lost as we've tried to excel and specialize at being materialists in modern culture. So if I were to say what's a topic that's fascinated me, it's that. What does that mean? Because nobody in my life has ever spent any time trying to understand it. No. What does it mean for my, just me being a human being before I start trying to understand me as a spiritual being trying to figure out being Catholic? What does it mean about paraphysical phenomena, right? Not supernatural, paraphysical, which I thought is a great word. Stuff like sightings of things like, or how to engage with angelic fairies, all of the stuff that is sidelined and woo-woo that we don't put on daytime television, but a lot of us show up at nighttime because like these are anecdotes we can't get around, and we don't have a world where they all make sense. And I'm like, I can't live in a world where someone goes, yeah, there's a heck of a bunch of really crazy stuff, but it doesn't fit our theories, so it's probably not there, and they're probably all high or tripping or something.
Yeah. Just disregard.
But then to go the other route and to have a whole ton of fundamentalist mindsets going like, yeah, all of it is demonic and it's all bad because we know how reality is and it is like this.
Yep.
I'm like, nope, that is not.
Yeah.
So I want to understand reality. And this is one topic or one aspect of it. So reading, at the same time, I'm like trying to read deeply Christian mystics and sacred scripture. And then I'm trying to read like mystics who are trying to bridge sort of these two worlds. And then I want to go and read what are those who are like outside the Christian tradition specifically, but when you read them, they are Christian in the sense of like not card carrying, but they're communicating the same truths.
Yes.
Through a glass darkly. And like that, I'm like, how did we lose our bridge to that?
We've talked about that those axioms of truth that like they're everywhere. They're not just in the Catholic traditions, and they're everywhere, or they hold true anywhere. And I like how that's one thing that we are both, kind of like one of our taglines, insatiably curious, is that the curiosity, let it go where it needs to go. It doesn't mean, so I've always been a fan of talking about anything and exploring anything. It doesn't mean because you talk about a different faith tradition that you're just, casting aside all that you know and believe and hold true. You're just talking, you're just learning. And I'm a big fan of doing that with anything, even in the Catholic space. I still consider myself a recent convert, 2016. But I'm still curious in the faith. And I know there's the pillars of the Catholic faith, but let's really get into the stuff that's not so discussed, or is a bit of gray. There's a bit of grayness in in the faith because it's not, dogmatically, defined. I love talking about those things, and even the ones that are dogmatically defined. Let's talk about it. Like,
this is why we've had such a blast of the last couple of years, and just this really growing friendship, because even if we don't fully know what the conclusions are and how to think about everything, but the fact that we're okay talking about like anything and everything. So this will end up, we've got to start to wrap for today, but like I said, I was making a list of like talking points, like for this channel, stuff I want to talk about this year. And one of them, which was actually a really fun prompt, which was make a list of extreme and offensive, perhaps, beliefs that you have. And
Oh,
I thought, I don't really have any. I'm trying to be a nice person. And then I realized, oh, wait, depending on who I'm talking to, they might think it
Yeah.
particularly this or that.
Yep.
So I made a list of funny stuff. And it ends up being funny to look at because, like I said, I don't look at this and think, yeah, look at me red pilling, the schnit out of life. It's like, no, a lot of this just feels very normal, but it would be actually very funny to talk through and actually find out, because I don't know, it'd be funny to talk through because it's not something that I do, and to sort of air it out.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And find what's the balanced way to be extreme.
Yeah.
There's this funny concept. I can't remember the show that I was on, but it was talking about how being practical, common sense, middle of the road, nuanced and tolerant it's become a new form of, or they try to brand it as a form of extremism now. Instead of being red pilled or polarizing, and the normal thing is to hunker down and fire at the enemy with everything you got and dehumanize them, to not do that. And it's not even like playing the middle road. It's like playing a completely different game where
you're at a different level. Yeah.
Yeah. To value human freedom, to value human dignity, and to still have clear opinions and, still be trying to figure out how to live in the world and how to be good and how to do good, it's just funny. Like nobody knows what to do with the group that stand in the middle. It's like, I don't pick a political party. It's not about that.
No.
So there's, okay, we're going to do this for a year. See what happens. There's way too much to talk about and I can go on forever. Look, I guess we'll just wrap. Friends, if anybody enjoyed some of this, drop in the comments, say hi. If you got like recommendations, things we should talk about, things we didn't talk about that you wish we had, please let us know. If you have like, hey, talk about this poster, talk about this movie, or maybe talk about a trailer. Like that'd be fun too. Like, well, yeah. Or if you have read or enjoyed anything, and if you want to take your shot at answering any of the questions that we brought up today, go ahead and say hi in the comments and let us know. And maybe, God willing, we plan to be back next week about the same time, maybe, and have some more conversations. So have a great week. Drink coffee, watch movies, and do good stuff.
Enjoy life.